Hey, what up guys, it's Sick, and today we're going to do the video for MQ2Necro. Now, this thing's been in the works for quite a while, and one of the reasons we delayed some of the new releases of the plugins are the, bus spending stuff, the ban suspending stuff that's been happening, as well as just other various real life and mainly a lot of in-game stuff happening. But we're actively working on all of them. All of the plugins are in a real healthy, real good shape. Yes, all of them. If I get a message asking me, I swear I'm going to lose my mind. So today is September 20th, and I'm hoping that I can finish this video and finish up some of the documentation for Necro, and I'm hoping I can have Necro built in with the build for tomorrow's patch. Now, I'm also going to do Paladin. Paladin might be next week, it might be Monday. But knowing me, I'll probably, if I get Necro, all the pre-release stuff done, I'll probably squeeze Paladin in there as soon as possible. But this is the Necro video, so let's get started. All right, so if you haven't used anything with the Chat with This Name class plugins before, please make sure you check the sticky thread about Chat with This Name info. Start here. That has a bunch of guides and information on how the plugins work and operate, and how to do things like save your settings, or how to adjust stuff, or how to add a clicky, or how to find where things like frequently asked questions or the commands are, or all of the other stuff. A good portion of the frequently time-consuming moments with the plugins as it relates to support ends up being re-answering questions that are already documented in those places with guides that we have and a sticky that says click here first. So inevitably we're going to be pasting that to a bunch of folks when this comes out, either first-time Chat with This Name plugin users or people who just haven't they haven't needed a lot of help, so they haven't been given the sticky thing. So let's hop right into it. So let me unload this thing, Necro unload, and I'm going to load it for the first time. Node. Now, if you don't get this window, that means you need to go and watch the clicky stuff, and it'll actually tell you in your output that you need to update your UI by doing like a /load skin default or a /reload UI. It actually says it in the output. I know people want to argue with me that it doesn't do that, but it actually does do that. It's just there's a lot of stuff that gets output. So reload your UI, boom, you'll have this window here. This window is going to pop out with all of the regular stuff you would expect. For me, since I already have clickies added, it's going to say what I have in here. Downtime clickies, I have my familiar, I have a metamorph totem for my pet. This particular tune has a scorpion. I actually prefer brownies, or the Veritix, or whatever the hell they're called, because you can see if they're holding weapons, so it makes your life a little bit easier if you can see that they're holding weapons. Scorpions don't have any hands, in case you didn't know, so you can't see if they're holding swords. I got my robe, and I got a shrink clicky. No, I don't have a coagulated robe and a shivery earring. Yes, I do have a shivery earring, but that's not my pet earring. My earring is a... Wait, what? Really? Oh, well, maybe this tune's trash. Sorry. It doesn't matter. I got my mod rods added in here, and health self clickies added. And you can see by just some of this being a mess, this means I need to go and remove some stuff and update some other stuff. Doesn't matter. All right, so we're going to get into all of the spells. It spits out all of the spells. Most of this stuff is stuff that we use automatically if either A, the plugin is loading it, or B, you did a BYOS or BYOS custom. There's a few exceptions to that. I don't think we use the res spell. If you have it memorized, I don't think we're using the... No, actually we do. We actually do. But there are a couple in here that we don't. We're not actually using the Volmund Nacht orb, the orb line. But we are auto-inventorying the little things that get shit out when you cast them. This may be stuff we end up using later, or once all the plugins get moved over to MacroQuest or Emu. That might be something we use there, because back in the day, I remember definitely using that particular spell line, which we don't in modern time. But by and large, most of this stuff we will see and use. Like here, Flesh to Venom, it's the spell Flesh to Venom, but we have the AA, so we're not going to use the actual spell line, but it's still useful to say that you're missing it, because some of the spells that cast best in group, if you don't have them in your book, then you're not going to be able to cast them, or you'll cast the AA or whatever and it won't cast anything. Nothing will happen because you're missing the spell that the best in group is trying to cast. So just like anything, it's going to tell you if you miss anything, and you can always do neck missing here, and it'll tell you if you're missing any spells or not. If it tells you you're missing anything, you need to go and get the damn thing. The amount of times people are like, hey, Six, so it says that I'm missing spells, but I don't want to get them, and the plugin's not doing anything. Well, I mean, go get some fucking spells, and then maybe it'll have spells to do stuff with, my dude. Not that hard. We also have here updated OMM robe. This is the Blightbringer's Tunic of the Grave. This is in the frequently asked questions about what the Muram robe is. And you can also make it so you don't use the Muram robe. We don't have to, but by and large, if you see anything in here, this is stuff we use automatically. So the robe is in here, we use it automatically. No, you don't need to add it to an ad clicky. That is also in the frequently asked questions, which we'll get to in a little bit. Let's hop over to these settings. There's a whole bunch of stuff with Necro, so we're going to be here a little bit. Let's go down this right side first, and then we'll go down this left side. So we have all the normal regular stuff: auto dismount, remove illusion, blah, 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 all of this, raid mode, use AoE. If you turn on use AoE, you're going to memorize Sphere in your 13 slot. It's not super useful. I had added this and then they nerfed it, so that was kind of obnoxious. But it's still there in case you do want to use that. Clears glyph stick, Mesimmune. Auto Mesimmune is just for in case you're using, you have Mez turned on and you're mezzing on your Necro, which when I was a young Warthog back in OG Necro times, Screaming Terror was my fucking shit. I could do amazing stuff by utilizing Screaming Terror, and I hold those memories fondly. Unfortunately, in modern game, both our Mez lines, the Undead Mez and the Anything Goes Mez, which is like the Screaming Terror line, are kind of poo, and they break all the fucking time. They break early and they don't last very long. So that kind of sucks. That would be for that. Auto Summon Remains. This is the same as in SK. We have the AA. We'll use Summon Remains AA to summon remains of group members which have died somewhere else in the zone, but only if they're alive and present in the zone currently, because we don't know if somebody else has a body somewhere else. Maybe later, once we do DanNet integration or any other method of actually communicating with other tunes, we may be able to be like, oh, you do have a body somewhere. Okay, we'll do the thing. But in the meantime, this will just be, if they're in the zone and they have a body that's not in camp, we'll summon it to you. Combat Summon Pet. I personally leave this off, and I haven't done the math on what it looks like today in 2022 raiding as a Necro, but it was just never a good idea to stop to summon your pet and rebuff your pet in raids back in the Diz A. So I personally keep that off, but that is there, and it might be useful for group content and such to summon and rebuff your pet in combat. Combat Summon Pet also does your pet haste line. We don't do that if you're using Charm. We don't do that in combat if you're using the Charm and you have a Charm pet. Keep Synergy. This will recast our Synergy spell if we meet our Synergy dot count and we're missing the Synergy buff. So the Synergy line is the of Blood, and that is something that we use as a nuke, but we also use to keep the Synergy buff up. So there's some options to be able to kind of tailor that to your personal usage. And like the mouse over says, it uses the Synergy dot count. Parox line, that is your paroxysm, which is like your Daiko, Dissident, Composite. It's crap. And there's a frequently asked question note about it, which we'll get to later, that says, hey, this is crap, why are you using it? If you turn it off, you'll memorize your Protector's Grasp instead, in that slot. Now, the caveat with Protector's Grasp is it's a longer cast time, so if you're in group content, you may not want that, blah, 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 blah. Frequently asked questions. I'm going to skip over this for a little bit. Use AA Snare. This is Encroaching Darkness. The same as with SK. We are not tracking or keeping track of immunities or not doing stuff for immunity purposes if you're getting an immune message. So if you don't want to do AA Snare, the Encroaching Darkness line, click that bad boy off. Use Charm. Again, like, this is so much worse than the Necro Mez. It breaks all the time. Super early. It also appears to be the case that any damage you take increases the likelihood that it's going to break, including Flesh to Venom, including your Lich line, including if you have, like, if fucking literally anything else on. It's super crap. It's like, I mean, super duper crap. Like Death Bloom, I mean, just forget it. Like, your charm is breaking. It's breaking. So it's crap. Don't waste your time. Use Dot Snare. So we will use a memorize Dot Snare spell. It does not auto-memorize it unless it's already going to get auto-memorized. Use BYOS Custom. This is more of a lower level thing. Some people like to have it memorized, but they don't want it automatically casted. They just want it memorized so they can use Eradicate, same as the other caster classes. Uses Eradicate Magic AA to remove beneficials from a target. Use Feign, same as like Beast and Monk. Use Flesh to Venom. So there's some notes in the frequently asked questions about Flesh to Venom. This is defaulted to be on? I don't know. I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to default that to off because you're just going to end up recasting it. And it's going to be a lot of questions about, like, why am I recasting this stuff over and over again? You only get 24 charges from it, so it goes away very quickly. Blah, blah, blah. I use Gathering Dust. There's an option for this because it gives you a huge amount of aggro. It's good for burns, but you can get a lot of aggro from it, and I can see places where people don't want to do that. Use Group Mana Tap. This is just an option to memorize your Mind Atrophy at 120. Otherwise, it's going to memorize your Pyre Long spell. This is pretty great for just group sustain. It's really helpful. There's a note in there in the frequently asked questions about if you have multiple Necros and you have Group Mana Tap on. It is very possible that multiple Necros cast Group Mana Tap at the same time. Now, we do have logic in there that it tries to spread them out if you do have multiple Necros in there, so you're not casting it at the same time. Unfortunately, it is a longish cast time, and the conditions to check to cast it are things like, do I have the buff, or does the person who needs mana, do they have the buff? And if they don't, and we've already gone through the delays that we have set to see, like, should I start casting it, then we're going to cast it. It's very likely, since it's like a 60-second recourse, that you can turn it off on all but one Necro and just let them do it. Or leave it on both and whatever. But I imagine that's going to be a thing that comes up every now and again, and it's not a big deal, and just figure it out. Use Ignite Bones. So Ignite Bones turns your mob into a skeleton. And a skeleton, you can do things like use your scent line if you have the AA that slows, and then slow the mob. So use Ignite Bones is essentially a use slow. So what'll happen, and again, there's a note in the frequently asked questions, there seems to be a general theme here. What's going to happen is we're going to scent a mob right away and then do shit to it, right? So we're going to scent a mob and then we're going to cremate bones it. If the cremate bones turns it into an undead creature, we're then going to rescent it, which will then make it slowed. We're not going to cremate bones it and then scent it. We're not going to delay scent because we might need the debuffs from scent early on for other people or ourselves or whatever the fuck. So if you're like, why is it using scent twice back to back after it casts Ignite Bones? That's because that's what it does. Use Lich. So this is like, your Lich line. This is your bread and butter. Like, if you turn this off, I mean, I guess, like, maybe you just, won't be walking around or whatever. However, you cannot die from Lich. If you are paused and your health gets too low, we're going to click it off. We're going to click it the fuck off. Same with Flesh to Venom. I had an instance that I talk about occasionally back in fucking 1873 where I had just found Demi-Lich on a vendor and memorized it, and I was like, woohoo! Oh my god, I woohoo! Because I got Demi-Lich. And then my dude died because Demi-Lich was on and I was so excited I didn't notice. And then I de-leveled, and then I had to re-level up so I can use Demi-Lich again. And if you've played a Necro for any period of length, you know that dying due to Lich sucks and you feel real dumb, and it definitely happens. So even if you're paused, we will actually uncheck Lich if you get below 30% health. To avoid a rebuffing and then re-unclicking thing, we don't use Lich. We don't cast Lich in a safe zone. So say a zone like Guild Lobby or your Guild Hall, we don't cast the Lich line at all. Use melee, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you're trying to get additional procs for mana, use melee's handy. Using the using the one-hander and shield, turn on use melee and get some extra procs. Cool. Otherwise, like two-hander for big deeps. Use mez again, please. Just don't bother using mez. Just don't do it. We don't automatically. If you click this, we're not going to automatically memorize stuff because you just shouldn't anyway. So, you're gonna have to BYOS or BYOS custom. Use a Murum Robe. So use the Murum Robe during burn, taking Spire, Pyre, dot count into consideration. This is just part of the burn rotation. There's not a whole lot of adjustability. Either you want us to use it or you don't want us to use it. In which case, that's what you're going to do, is you're going to turn this on or off, and you can adjust the stuff that I said over here on the left-hand side. We'll get to in smidge. Okay, that seems pretty good. So we got use Murum Road, use nuke. So you can turn this off. If you don't want to use nukes, like for example, you don't want to use Proclamation of Blood for some reason, you just hate it, you can turn it off. You can turn off use of Ignite Bones. Should be our Ven and DD spell. Yeah. So you can turn that off and you won't do nukes. If you notice, there is not a use dot option to turn the fuck dots off. If you don't want to use dots, you should /plugin MQ2Necro unload, or /exit, or I would like to buy a Paladin, Centel, something. I can't possibly imagine anybody can convince me of where you need to turn off dots outside of dot mana min and assisting and not be just no. Use rune. So use the rune buff line. Use Swarm Pet. So use Swarm Pet's kind of neat. In raids, it's kind of useless, right? You don't really want to use Skeleton Mass in raids if you're in a regular raid, because you get lag with Swarm Pets and stuff. So this actually will disable all Swarm Pet usage. We're going to memorize something else instead. I think if you have B, use Shield of Fate. Yeah, if you have use Shield of Fate, we're going to memorize Shield of Fate, and we're going to keep that up. If you don't have use Shield of Fate, we're not going to memorize anything in that slot. So this is one of those times where if you don't have either of those turned in, you're not going to memorize anything. It's totally fine and totally cool and totally intended. A little flexibility that if you want to memorize something, instead you can do that. So use Swarm Pet also does Rise of Bones and Waking Dead and all of that other crap. They're not split out. They're not individualized on that. I don't really have any plans on doing that. It's possible that somebody might make an argument that they do want to use the Swarm Pet, but they don't want to use the other bullshit Swarm Pets. So that's possible. That's one of those things that if somebody makes a compelling argument that backs it up with stuff, that it's something that I'll consider. But otherwise, this is just going to be by and large, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, use Scent, which I mentioned before. Use Scent of Thule. Now, Scent of Thule is our pulling ability. Even if you have you have use Scent turned off, that's what we use for pulling. So we're still going to use it for pulling. But Scent of Thule is awesome. It does Scent of Terrace and Scent of the Grave. And then if it's undead, Scent of other cool stuff. On the left-hand side, we have all the normal stuff you'd expect: Assistat, Camp Radius, Chase, Count, Burn, Burn Count, Dot Hit Points. So this is for regular mobs. This is if a mob is at 30 or below hit points, and it's a non-named mob, a non-named, what Chat With His Name plugin says is named, stop dotting it at 30%. We're still going to nuke. We're going to nuke until it's dead. but I don't want to waste casting a dot on it if it's at 30%. And it's adjustable in case you want to put that to like 1 or something, that's fine. Dot hit point named, that, you know, named, you probably want to keep dotting, they're going to have a lot more health. Dot mana minimum, life tap, this is your health before you want to cast regular life tap. So like if we're not in raid mode, like we're memorizing Soul Flay, it just gives us some flexibility if we take damage, or allows us to do things like proc, where is it? Reluctant Benevolence. For some reason I couldn't remember that spell. It allows us to proc Reluctant Benevolence, which is cool for, like, you know, for stuff. Mana AA conversion allows us to configure at what mana percentage we want to use Death Bloom and Blood Magic. And then we have our nuke mana minimum, pet heal, Spire Pyre dot count, and synergy dot count. So if you remember here when I mentioned that we have keep synergy and it respects our synergy dot count. So what this says is before I start keeping up synergy, I want to have 3 of my dots on the mob. So I want to get, like, you know, maybe I want to get my first 3 spells out. I want to get like Pyre out. Probably, I don't know what the order is off the top of my head. It'll vary, obviously. Let's say I want to get, like, make sure I got Pyre. I want to get Hemorrhagic and like fucking Extinction Line on, and then cast it. So it's going to be 3. Now, the way that I do the dot counts is articulated in the frequently asked questions, and it's particular. It's not just anything that you cast on the mob. It's dots, or it is taps over time. So, like Scent of Thule does not count because it's not a dot. You know, Pyre of Coolness, Zakra, this counts as a dot. And then Spire Pyre dot count. It's the similar methodology where it's counting how many dots you have, but these are the amount of stuff we want on the mob before we hit our Spire or Pyre or our Muram Rope, whatever. And obviously the way that we handle that is all built into the thing with no adjustability on that. So if you don't want it to use Spire Pyre dot count, you can either turn off burns with your burn count and your burn name, burn always, whatever. You know, turn that bitch to 990. Actually, I think I put this. You can only go to, yeah, you can only go to a 100. Okay, so that's that. Let's hop over into the browser. I don't know why I find that so entertaining when just my face. All right, we're gonna go through some of these. Oh no, I need this over here. All right, we're gonna go through some of these frequently asked questions, and I gotta look because it's over on that screen. Is this a paid plugin like the other chat with this name plugins? Yes. It will be in pre-release for an unpredetermined amount of time, likely 2 to 4 weeks, and set for a full paid release sometime later down the road. We do usually announce that ahead of time. What typically happens is we put it for a paid release, and then a good majority of people don't actually patch until live patch date. So it'll be paid release, and then like they'll still be using it until they I've been using this for a while, but now I get an error box when I'm trying to log in. So if it's a white box that says like a bunch of what looks to be hieroglyphics, it's likely because you have an out-of-date plugin, or it says it wasn't built against the correct, MQ2 main. That means you either need to change your MacroQuest INI for MQ2Necro 1 to MQ2Necro 0, delete the MQ2Necro DLL, or purchase a 12-month license. We got a bunch of the regular stuff. My UI window doesn't save my settings. This is like the #1 asked question of all time. It's in the UI video, and it's the first thing in here. When UI window doesn't save the location, just need to make that happen. Okay, why do I frequently recast Mortificer's Unity? Mortifiers? What the fuck is it? Mort Unity. Hold on, we're gonna rectify this bitch. And activate Mortifiers. Yeah, did that right? Mortifiers. It's likely refreshing Flesh to Venom, which only has 24 charges, or you have an issue with mana regen stacking illusions. So just like with the SK plugin, you know, there are some spells that MacroQuest has, MacroQuest and EverQuest have issues with figuring out what stacks and what takes priority, and also with illusions. So I personally recommend blocking all skeletal illusions on all tunes all time. And then you will want to figure out if you want Lich or whatever. It's usually mainly a problem when you have a disparity in level tiers. So like a level 110, 115 tier spell and then like a 120 spell. But I'll add that in there, how to add block buffs and stuff like it. We remove Flesh to Venom for Twin Cast. We sure do. We don't want Flesh to Venom be taking up some... I don't like the spell loadout. Are there spell sets? That's a good question. Originally, when I started this, well, I'll read this. It says, no, not at this time. I spent a large amount of time looking in to see if that was something I wanted to build in, and for multiple reasons it wasn't. It just doesn't apply the same loadouts. If you want to keep load your own spells, you can use BYS or BYS Custom. Keep in mind, broadly, the plugin only. So originally this did have loadouts, but it turns out it wasn't as applicable as I was hoping it would be, and it actually took away some flexibility that I think the plugin has now, which is especially when it comes to like raid swap dots, which I skipped over. Raid swap dots. That's okay. We'll see. I am the bestest Necro in the world. I have a Necro Epic Duck Stick and 1.5/2.0 tramp stamp, and I think you should do X, Y, or Z. Okay, so this is bound to happen. Like, I get it. Necros are a class that people are super passionate about because the people who played them have like dealt with bullshit for years, and like the community in the community, Necro community itself, there's always been drama. There's always been people who are shitbags who, you know, I don't know. It like, if you've played a Necro for a long time, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, that's totally fine. But people who play Necros are real passionate about Necros, so I get it. However, if you have something useful to add that you can support with details and math, please post in the discussion thread. Keep in mind, as with all the chat with his name plugins, these are not a quote, how sick or chat with his name manually play. These are intended to work in a very broad use case, mostly out of the box with minimal setup. Certainly open to feedback and suggestions, but if you're looking for a very specific niche stuff, this is not the utility or tool for that. It's almost always a no, we have no plans on doing that until that changes. So don't be surprised if you get a no. Also, Necro specifically, played it at a high level for a long time. And unless if you're POTUS from Bristolbane back in like 99 or 01, your cool stories are probably super cool. They probably don't impress me. Though there are at least two other Necros from back in the day on Bristolbane I really, really would love to get in contact with. Alright, I want to root rot. So while you might be able to do that, we don't do any rooting. Though we are rooting for your success and your continued many loots. We also don't do any punting. We're also not going to try to save yourself from breaking your own roots from procs and AAs outside of use nuke. This, at the end of the day, is for boxing. So, like, root rotting is more kind of a thing you're doing as a solo tune, or you're PLing or whatever. It's not. It doesn't really fit in the scope of like boxing. Again, I get it. I've done a lot of root rotting. I've done a lot of like, no, you're a Necro. We don't want you in our group. Go fuck yourself. And I've been like, fine. Like, I'm just gonna go over here and get more XP when I could be hanging out with y'all fine folks and get y'all some XP. I want a Fear Kite. Nope, we're not doing that either. I want to willy-nilly swap targets to multi-dot debuff, snare, root, /rude, pickpocket, and piggyback ride. Look, I get it, right? Like, one of the best Necro guides out there is like, oh, one of the best things we bring to the table is multi-dotting, meaning like swapping to multiple targets and dotting them up and killing all sorts of shit at the same time. That is absolutely true. Even if you want to do that, you should manage that by having your MA swap targets to the target that you want dotted, and then you can multi-dot. When I'm driving and I'm rocking some Necros, I absolutely do that myself. And they are doing what I tell them to do, so I wait till I see 3 pyres pop up on that motherfucker, maybe another spell or 2, then I swap targets, and like that one's gonna get down dead or pretty low to dead, and I can just keep rocking, and awesome. But we're not gonna willy-nilly target around. It's too chaotic, there's too much to keep track of, and there's too much of like, just kill the mob you're fighting and let your CC do the CC job, you know? Why don't you do insert cheaty exploit here? I get messages all the time. I also get like passive aggressive messages that were like, oh, I told Sick and he didn't like it, and so I'm gonna send you because you can send it. I get shit like that all the time, and it actually actively pisses me off, right? Like things that are clearly exploits, things that can get people's tunes permanently banned, or things that are clearly not intended in a way that is like ban city. Like we're just not gonna do that. It's cool that that's a thing, and if you don't get banned, awesome. Like I hope that doesn't happen, but like doing weird exploitive stuff, we're just not going to. Oh, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's cool. If you do know what I'm talking about, like probably keep that to yourself. I want to aggro kite in a bad pathing area to exploit the bad pathing so I never get touched. Again, cool story. We're not going to do that. Sorry about that. That's just not possible. It's not possible for us to be like, oh, we know exactly how that bad pathing is going to work, so let's fucking run around like idiots. I want to turn mobs undead and slow them. Awesome. Like that's an easy one, dude. Turn on use ignite bones and make sure use scent is turned on. We'll turn them into a skeleton and then slow their ass. I can't pick up essence emeralds, life shards, or orbs. Yep. Since they're end up on our cursor from casting, we need to auto inventory them. If you want to move them around, pause the plugin. They'll like it instantly. Well, I died a lich while paused. I don't know why I have this like I-coded hold and online. It says no, we don't let you die to lich or flesh to venom, even if you're paused. Nice try. We will save you. Lich, we won't cast Lich unless you're above 90 health. We'll remove Lich, Flesh to Venom if you go below 30. We also don't cast it in safe zones. Again, like, we don't want you to die. I want to use a lower level synergy spell for mana purposes. So, back when TOL came out, they didn't have, like, ranks for the Defiler synergy that, like, actually worked with the new synergy, so you would use the older version. And since you don't really get a whole lot from it, you're kind of just using it to keep up synergy. Like you're like, oh, cool, I can save some mana. There's not really a whole lot of reason to do that, so we're not going to do that. This is one of those things that I could be flexible on if somebody like really wants to bring me a whole bunch of arguments on why they would like for us to do that. But this is something that I think is dumb, and we're not going to do it. When do you use Spirepire and Robe? They're part of the burn routine. Check your settings and adjust what we offer adjustability for, or you can turn them off if you want to handle it manually. Again, like I totally understand. Necro is one of those things where it's like I don't want anybody touching my buttons. Like I get it. I do more damage. Cool. Like awesome. I'm sure you do. I definitely believe that you do. But if you want us to do it, this is how we're gonna do it. What is a Muram robe? So I have some links here. It's the Neral Silk Armor quest with the J-Rex vest from Asylum of Anguish. You need a little bit of faction. Right now there is like double faction happening, so it's a good time to get faction up if you have it. Do I need to add Muram robe to add clicky? No, we handle that automatically. I would not automatically like turn it to like burn clicky or like offensive. How do you count dots? Is it counting debuffs and non-dots? No. We're only counting damage over time spells and tap duration tap spells for dot count. And so that's for purposes of like keep synergy and for Spirepire dot count. Life burn. We don't currently have life burn put in here. I've really tried to make life burn useful. It's really not. It's really not. Like, and I'm open for arguments on that. Like I can put it in with a toggle, but I don't think that's going to be useful. Why are you memorizing composite dissident Daiko? It sucks. Well, it does suck. You can turn it off if you don't want to memorize it. You'll memorize grasp tap, which is the like vectors, whatever, in its place. But keep in mind, grasp tap has a longer cast time. It's like a 4.5 second count. So depending on what you're doing, group content, raid content, raid content, we're going to handle grasp tap anyway. We're actually going to like do that as part of a raid swap thing. I have an empty spell gems. Oh no, all right, raid swap. Yes, we do raid swap dots. And I'm not going to explain all of the stuff that it does, but there are several spells. If you're in raid mode, we're going to get rid of a couple of spells in your regular spell lineup. Like Venom, we're gonna get rid of Venom, and we're gonna like have loaded your wounds line for example. Cast. We're gonna cast wounds. And then there's some other spells we're going to, like, between casts, we're going to, like, while you're on fucking GCD, we're going to memorize another dot and have that as part of our rotation. It's pretty fucking awesome. If I go back to the overview page here, you can see some of these parses. Black, Obelisk, or Oubliette of Light, Zlandi. A lot of Zlandi in here. Zlandi's undead, so like Scourge does a lot against him, and like it's a raid that like a lot people do pretty regularly because it's like a very good raid. But like look at some of the damage here. Look at some of the SDPS Zlandi raid. Here's 3 Necros, 2.8, 2.3, 2.2. Another Zlandi raid, 3.5. I mean, Zlandi ends up being a short fight for people who know what's going on. You know, like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, but like fuck off. 3.5 on a raid? Like, come on. Here's another Zlandi raid. Here's a bunch of classes, all Chat With His Name plugins. So you can kind of see where that stacks up relative to other classes on the same mob during the same fight. So if you're like, oh, well, that's because other classes are doing bananas or whatever, like they're still pretty insane. Another Zlandi raid, 2.8, 2.3. Here's a breakdown just from a random one. I don't even think this is this one. No, it doesn't appear to be this one, but so you can kind of see like where the damage is coming from, right? Like, so I was talking about earlier, like the first 3 are like your Pyre, your Hemorrhagic, Venom, and Extinction, blah, blah, blah. Procs are pretty high in this stuff, so that's something to keep in mind for gearing purposes. Like, do you want that 2-hander, or do you want that 1-hander? But like Necros are doing pretty great. I believe all of these are with raid swap dots, because that's that one I've only had in there for a couple of months. But that's definitely stuff that people are happy with. I am very happy with raid swap dots. I wasn't planning on putting raid swap dots in. Like back in the day, you had to have a bunch of sets, and it was like stupid trying to manage all of it. And I wasn't going to do that because it's mainly not necessary, right? So like you don't have to swap dots to like here, you're like, yep, use it or don't. No customization. Do you need to swap dots? No, it does great on raids without it. Can you get more damage with it? Yes. So if you don't want to swap dots, it's totally cool. You don't need it, but it's like, give it a try and see what the difference is. I have an empty spell gem. Yep. If you have, like, depending on what your options are, it's possible to have an empty spell gem. For example, gem 7 can end up empty form, and you Seal the Fate. This might be a good place to manually memorize a mez or other non-auto spell that the plugin says it. Charm, I mentioned before, Charm is an option. We don't auto-memorize it. Necro Charm in the modern area is terrible, and it breaks far too often. Please use it. If you do, have it memorized, like BYS Custom, with Use Charm turned on, and make sure you kill your pet. I want to recharm the same mob. Unfortunately, same thing with Enchanter. We don't store any mob information, so we're not like, hey, this is the mob I charmed. It's a live recharm the thing. We'll just charm the first and best choice for charming we find. When we go to charm, this may not always recharm. Do you mez? Yes, we use both Screaming Terror and Undead Mez line, which can only mez undead. Currently, we do not auto-memorize. Same thing with that. Can Necro broadcast mezzing? Yep. So, like any of the plugins that's going to do any mezzing, we have the option to broadcast it. This is going to automatically detect if you're using EQBC or if you're using DanNet and broadcast things. My Necro sometimes moves to do stuff when I don't have use melee on. Okay. To be real clear, the only way that this happens is if you are mezzing. Okay, it's the same with an Enchanter. If the mob is in your camp radius and you don't have line of sight on it, we're going to move until we have line of sight on it because we can mez. Because our job, we have use mezzing turned on, our job is to mez that motherfucker. So where that can end up being problematic is, let's say you're in a zone with, like, you're inside a doorway. The mob might come inside your camp because your camp goes through the door, and then you don't have line of sight on it, so you may move to it to get line of sight to get it mezzed. But that only happens while mezzing. I hope you're probably not mezzing. How can I get it to break invis to do stuff? So we'll break invis if a camp set, so mode 1 would break invis, whereas mode 0 would not. If you want to break invis on a mode like mode 2, turn on use melee. Epic 1.0, 5, 2.0. We don't use the 1.0, 1.5, 2, and of course if you're low nerf level, 1.5, 2, and 2.5 is awesome, so equip it, but we're not going to click it. Like, those things are too long of a cast time. Even like back when the click from it, the little red skeleton you get, it looked cool, but it was... Because Necros are all about, like, always be casting. You should always be doing some shit. Like, they're basically juggling. Why am I not pulling? It's the same as normal stuff. Neck debug pull on once. Why does my neck not mez? There's the autoimmune. Check that stuff. Lower level feels weird, has empty gem slots or blah. Empty gem slots are bound to happen at lower levels, and depending on configuration and abilities, feedback for this should be posted in a discussion thread. It doesn't mean it will be adjusted, but under many or most circumstances, we do want to have a useful spell lineup loaded and ready to get used in the plugins. So, that should be pretty much everything that we have in here so far. So again, this will probably be in pre-release for a couple of weeks, hopefully starting tomorrow. I actually am going to have Paladin in kind of the same thing. I need to do the documentation and all of that jazz. So that might be, it might be, in the same time frame. It might be another week. It might be another 2 weeks. I know it's also soon PM. So just like as a final wrap up, just, this year's been kind of tough. Like I've had some pretty significant personal changes in my life this year that have been very unexpected and very big. I did shave off my mohawk. Now, let me be real clear because I don't want to be like, I don't want to make there be like any misunderstanding that somehow like the big changes is like cancer or something. I did not have cancer. I'm actually like, I was sick a couple of years ago, which is what had me find MacroQuest, but it wasn't like end of life sort of situation, and it wasn't cancer. But I did shave off my mohawk. Like my last video I had shaved off my mohawk. My hair is growing back. I don't know what I'm doing with it. It looks crazy, and I have like big hair. So Svet, this is for you. Like, if I don't do like a song or dance for Svet, she'll get upset. But so like I recognize my hair is looking a little crazy. I've lost a bunch of weight. I don't know if it translates pretty well, but I've lost something stupid like 60 pounds or some shit. I got some more weight I want to lose and all of that jazz. I am happy. My life is happy. I'm very grateful for everything I do have in my life. I'm very grateful for the people that I have in my life, people who choose to have me in their life. I am grateful for all of you, despite any times where I sound grumpy or miserable, or like my sarcasm translates poorly over the internet, which is a common thing. For those who don't know, I was born in England, and I don't know if it's just like English sarcasm or happened to be sarcasm, and we did that to being English. But my sarcasm is pretty thick, so sometimes when I don't intend on sounding like I'm being a dick, I do sound like that. But that's pretty much what we have going on. If we all cross our thumbs and fingers and toes, we have this on the launcher for tomorrow after live patch, and if not, I will try and have it for sometime in the next couple of days. That's where we're at now. Love you guys. Thank you so much.